Does Valvoline really clean your engine, or is it just a fancy label on a jug of oil? You see, removes up to 100% of deposits on the bottle and naturally think, okay, but does it actually do anything? Or is that just marketing? If you've got a higher mile car or truck, you don't want to find out the hard way that it was mostly buzzwords. Before we get too deep, it helps to frame this three ways: what Valvoline is promising, what owners and mechanics are arguing about, and where this oil actually fits for a normal high mileage car. First, what is this stuff supposed to be? Restore and Protect is Valvoline's premium full synthetic that they say works on anything from a new car's first oil change to a 200,000-mile commuter. On their site and major retailer listings, they claim it can remove up to 100% of harmful piston deposits with continuous use, return pistons to a factory clean state, and give stronger wear protection than the basic API-SP and ILSAC GF6A minimums. It's not a pouring additive. It's a normal oil change with a heavier cleaning and protection story. That up to 100% line is the eye catcher, so what does it actually mean? Valvoline ties it to an adapted sequence of Thurage-style engine test, where an engine is run hot and stressed on a dyno and then graded for piston deposits. In that controlled setup, after 4 or more normal-length oil changes using Restore and Protect, the pistons in the test engine cleaned up to essentially the same level as new ones. Here's the grounding point. Restore and Protect still has to behave like any other modern passenger car oil. The bottles carry the API-SP and ILSAC GF6A markings, which means it passed the same core tests as other name brand synthetics for wear, sludge, deposits, and related issues like timing chain wear and low-speed pre-ignition on small turbo engines. Those standards already limit how dirty pistons and rings are allowed to get. This oil can't be some wild solvent blend. It has to be safe day-to-day oil that just leans harder on the cleaning side. So why a special Restore product at all? Valvoline's explanation is basically that they've tuned the additive package more towards cleaning existing deposits and then keeping things clean, stronger deposit removal chemistry to loosen old carbon and varnish, plus a protective side that slows new buildup. In plain English, this blend is meant to wash more old junk off piston areas and keep it suspended so the filter can catch it. This is where the arguing starts. If you scroll through Bob, as the oil guy threads, Reddit, Facebook groups, or the comments under mechanic channels on YouTube, you see two camps. One camp says Restore and Protect is mostly label work, and that any quality API-SP full synthetic on regular intervals will slowly clean an engine. The other camp shares stories like, cold start tick is quieter, oil went dark really fast, or my consumption dropped after a few changes on this stuff, especially on engines with a reputation for ring deposits. Oil consumption is a good way to see why both sides feel the way they do. Engines burn oil for two main reasons. One, their worn out cylinder walls, valve seals, guides. No oil fixes that. 2, the hardware is basically fine, but the ring pack and drain holes in the pistons are packed with carbon, so the oil control rings can't scrape properly. That second case is exactly why newer standards like GF6 and API-SP tighten piston deposit and ring sticking limits. Restore and Protect aims at that second problem. If your rings are sticky and drain holes are clogged, running a stronger cleaning package for several normal oil changes can free things up and reduce oil use. That lines up with some of the real-world stories you see people with big SUVs or compact cars that used to burn a quart every 3,000 miles. And after a few back-to-back intervals on this oil, either slowed way down or stopped burning at that rate. On the flip side, you'll also find folks who saw no change at all, which usually points to engines that were already pretty clean or already worn out. Another pattern you see online is that this stuff turned black immediately comment. A lot of people who switch a somewhat neglected engine to Restore and Protect say the first fill went dark, quickly hundreds of miles, not thousands. Some mechanics and enthusiasts see that as a sign that the oil is doing what it says, pulling old deposits into suspension. A few, especially working on known sludge-prone engines, choose to run that first interval short and swap the filter early as cheap insurance. If you've actually run Restore and Protect, I'm genuinely curious where you land on that. What are you driving? What engine? How many miles are on it? How long did you run that fill? What oil filter did you use? Something like 08F50 did you use? Something like 08F155. For a 90K, 4,000 mile interval on a motorcraft filter says a lot more than just it helped or it didn't. Now, about that 4 oil changes phrase Valvoline uses. The big piston cleaning claim is tied to using the oil for 4 or more consecutive intervals at your normal recommended change length, not a one-time miracle dump. That matches how cleaning actually works. You're softening and removing deposits layer by layer, while fresh detergent arrives with each fill. It's less shock treatment and more strong dish soap every time you wash the same dirty pan. Cold start noise is another part of the story that comes up a lot. In reviews and owner feedback on various channels, a common line is, "It sounds smoother on startup," or "My lifter tick is less noticeable now, especially on high-mile engines that rattled a bit when cold." Some of that is just any fresh, correct viscosity oil replacing tired, beat-up oil. But if you free sticky rings and clear varnish out of small oil passages and lifter bores, you can help oil pressure stabilize quicker and keep those first few seconds after startup calmer. Now let's talk about the part that really spooks people, the oil filter. Search around and you'll find warnings that a cleaning oil like this can load a filter with sludge and starve the engine, so you should change the filter at 500 to 1,000 miles. On the other hand, Valvoline's own explanation says Restore and Protect is designed to clean gradually, and that it doesn't shorten filter life or hurt filter performance. Some forum regulars echo that, saying it's not an engine flush in a jug, it's just a stout synthetic that loosens deposits over regular intervals. So whose advice do you follow? A calm way to look at it is to judge based on history. If the car has had halfway decent maintenance, regular changes on name brand oil, no giant horror gaps, there probably isn't a mountain of sludge waiting to fall off. In that situation, using Restore and Protect on the normal schedule with a decent filter isn't a risky move. If, on the other hand, you bought a 80,000-mile commuter with a sketchy past, the oil cap is brown and crusty, you know it lived on long conventional intervals, that's a different story. In that case, a shorter first interval or an early filter change is more about peace of mind than anything the chemistry strictly demands. The same logic as doing a couple of shorter changes after switching from terrible oil to good oil on any old engine. So here's an easy pick-a-side question. Early filter change with Restore and Protect, yes or no? I'd lean no for a well-maintained engine and optional, not crazy for something that's clearly been neglected, but I'm interested in how you'd call it. One more thing that matters. Restore and Protect still has to do the basic oil job well. Valvoline's marketing points out that its anti-wear performance in industry testing is stronger than the baseline GF6 reference oil. The simple takeaway is you're not trading protection just to chase cleaning. It's meant to be a solid everyday oil first, with the Restore angle layered on top. If you're thinking about trying Restore and Protect on your own high mileage daily, you can frame it pretty simply. Does the engine show signs that could be deposit-related oil burning that isn't from obvious leaks, cold start noise, or a reputation for rings sticking on that engine family? And has it been at least reasonably maintained so far? If yes to both, then running this oil for a few consecutive intervals and watching your dipstick and cold start sound is a reasonable experiment. If the engine is already spotless and never burns a drop, or it's so worn that it smokes no matter what you do, then you're mostly just buying a good full synthetic with a slightly louder story. And if you've already done 2 or 3 back-to-back intervals on Restore and Protect, I'd really like to hear the detailed version. What you drive, engine, total miles, your change interval, and what filter brand you used. Those specifics help separate made a difference from felt different. So does Valvoline really clean, or is this just marketing? The honest answer sits in the middle. The chemistry and engine tests behind the claims are real. Valvoline clearly leans harder than usual on piston cleanliness and deposit control, and the bold up to 100% line is tied back to an actual engine deposit test, not pulled out of thin air. In real cars, results depend a lot on how dirty or worn the engine was to start with, and whether you give the oil several normal changes to work. For deposit-heavy but basically healthy engines, it can help over time. For already clean or already tired engines, it's mainly a solid premium oil with a louder label. If you're a typical high-mileage US driver who just wants the car to start every morning, not drink a quart every weekend, and maybe sound a little less grumpy on cold starts, Restore and Protect is a reasonable option to try, especially if you suspect ring deposits and don't want to mess with separate flushes and additives. Just go in expecting gradual improvement over a few changes, not a magic reset after one fill. The whole filter side of this story, different filter designs, cheap filters versus higher-end ones, and how they behave if you're doing a lot of cleaning, that's a rabbit hole on its own. For now, the simplest way to answer the title is this. Restore and Protect isn't magic, and it isn't pure marketing either.